Pre-haircut shears. My favorite is this ConAir Pro 6-inch long little shear. This is a tank. This will go through mud, mats, all kinds of craziness, and it's sharp enough to trim hair, and it's not sharp enough to easily hurt the skin. One of the coolest features of this shear is the tip. If you compare an average shear, an average rounded tip shear with this one, you're gonna see that this has a heart shape on the tip and this one has a rounded tip. Why is this heart shape a big deal? It's because whenever you're working close to the skin, this heart shape will prevent you from trimming the skin. How does that work? The two bumps on the tip of the shear will prevent you cutting the skin. Whenever you're working close to the skin and you squeeze the shear, you see it on my skin that it gets yellow and then it just rolls off the two tips. Whenever you squeeze the skin with this shear, the two little bumps will make sure that the skin will roll off the tips. You see that it gets yellow, so I'm squeezing it and it rolls off. You can see the color change on my skin, that it goes back to pink after the squeezing sensation is away, and as you can see, there is no lines, no sign of blood. This is why I love this shear so much, because even if you're working close to a sensitive area, you can make sure that you're not cutting into the skin. Now, if we compare it with my old shear, then it's just gonna get stuck in there and it won't go away. It won't roll off. It will squeeze, and if you squeeze any further, you're gonna nick the skin. And as you can see, there are two little dots in there, which means that the tips on the inner side will dig in my skin and it won't roll off, and I can feel this, and I can feel the sensation. It's already there, like I'm not comfortable, and the doggy will wiggle in case they feel this sensation. So comparing these two, even the sensation of putting it closer to my skin is absolutely different, and I will absolutely prefer this sensation around my skin rather than this one, because here, even though it looks like rounded, the tip in the middle is still pointy and it's just not comfortable enough. They come in 3 sizes. I could not find my tiny one, so you can get a 7-inch long, a 6-inch long, and a 5-inch long shear. As for size, I recommend you get a 6-inch one because this is small and large enough to work easily and get the hang of using shears comfortably and fast around the face, feet, and fanny area. This will work well for trimming the hair among toe pads and the paw pad, also in between the toes and around the face and privates. And for puppies who are teeny tiny, like mini doodles, I would say you can get the 5-inch long one, so you can make sure that you fit among and between the pads as well, because that's going to be a little easier to maneuver around those spots. But in general, even for puppies, I recommend the 6-inch one because that's going to work just perfectly well, and you get the hang of using a shear easier in case you're working on working with a 6-inch long one. Generally speaking, you need more experience to use a longer shear than to use a smaller one. Another reason why I love this particular shear is because they are sharp enough to cut and go through mud, hair, and all kinds of crazy stuff like plant parts, but they are not sharp enough to easily cut in the skin. What do I mean? In case you want to practice and understand how it works, and I highly recommend you do this one because you need to understand how it works and how sharp it is. So here I'm gonna be the guinea pig for you, so you can see whenever you are squeezing on the skin, and I'm going pretty hard here. Whenever you're squeezing on the skin, you feel the pressure, the sensation, but it's not gonna cut the skin. Now, I never would dare to try this one with this guy. So in case you are squeezing, and you can see I squeeze fairly well, you can see the line there, but no blood, nothing. So you really have to try to hurt a doggy. Now, that's good because most of us are not going that route, right? So whenever you're squeezing, it's gonna be a sensation, but it's not gonna be an injury. Whenever you are squeezing and pulling in either direction, it's gonna cut the skin. I'm not gonna do that on me because that will draw blood. and we don't want that. And I don't want you to try that either. I just want you to know that squeezing is safe in a sense that it's not gonna draw blood. So your doggy will show you sensitivity signs, but you're not gonna injure the dog. In case you were trying to do something or use something like this on the doggy, or a straight one, or it's not a straight one, but it's not a thinning shear. In case you were trying to use something like this on the doggy's paws, I really would not recommend this because they are super sharp. I wouldn't dare to touch it with my skin anywhere around the inner blades, because on the inner sharp blades, because it's just gonna draw blood right away. Like, they're incredibly sharp. So these guys for the face, feet, and fanny trim will work amazing and will keep you safe. Handling the pre-haircut shear. We already talked about this. You can squeeze, but don't pull. Squeezing will cause discomfort for the doggy, but it won't cause injury. That's critical to stay safe. We don't want to squeeze either, but in case you do, that you can rest assured your doggy is going to be safe. Poke test. If you compare these two guys, it's way more comfortable to deal with the poking sensation of this one than with this one. Even though it's rounded, there is a middle section here which is just not comfortable to have around my skin. Doggies feel the same way. General safety thing, how to hold the shear on or around the skin. As we all know, the inner edges of the shear will cut. So we want to make sure that that area is away from the skin. How do we do that? We hold the shear this way. And that's gonna give you safety regardless of which area you're working on the body, that if you hold hold the shear this way on the skin, you're not gonna cut the skin. If you take a look, you logically can't cut the skin. Now keep in mind that there are tricky spots on the doggies where it's not just a big stretchy straight surface around the dog, but there are folds and little corners like armpits, the belly thigh flap around the hips that will be tricky to work on, and you really need to make sure that you are stretching out the skin so you're gonna know exactly that you are working on a flat surface, and this method will keep you safe. In case you're playing with the angle and you're moving the shear on the sides, let me show it to you this way so it's going to be easier to know the angle. In case you're angling the shear this way, it's going to be way trickier and it's not the safest way to go, because what we were talking about, the edges will get closer to the skin. In case you need to work on the doggy's skin, like cutting something out, let's say this is the doggy's skin surface, this is the doggy, this is a bunch of hair, and I want to cut the middle two bunches out because they are matted. So the way I can go about is I check for the distance between the base of the mat and the skin. That will give you a safety grip that will prevent you to get close to the skin enough to cut the skin. How do we do that? In case there is let's say this is the doggy skin, this is the hair, and the mat start here. So I put my finger between the skin and between the base of the mat like that, and I'm gonna be able to cut the mat out this way, regardless of the body part. Again, this is the safest way to use when you're working parallel with the skin. I don't recommend, especially not recommend for beginners, to use this method for trimming out mats, because you never know how deep they are, how tight they are, and whenever you're holding this way, it's very easy to go a little bit lower and cutting the skin. So whenever you are working on mats and holding the shear this way, you need to get that safety grip to be safe. Whenever you are doing haircuts on the doggy in general, you can use this parallel method. Actually, you need to use this parallel method, but you're not gonna work that close to the skin, and it's gonna be harder to hurt the dog that way. What is the pre-haircut shear for? I love to use it for face, feet, and fanny trims on dry, clean, or dirt coat, regardless. This is a tank, it will go through anything. As well as removing mats from the doggy's body whenever they are smaller or bigger, or loosening them up and cutting in the mat so I'm not ruining my real haircut shears. For parents who are on the budget, the longer version of this will work as a straight haircut shear as well. So you can get a haircut shear on the budget if you go with the 7-inch long one I do not really recommend to use it on the face, feet, and fanny parts because it's just a little bit too long to get the hang of using a shear easily. Handling of the pre-haircut shear. I love and suggest to hold the shear this way. So your thumb is resting in the lower hole. Your index, middle, and ring finger, along with your pinky, will lay and rest on the top. Now, why do we want your pinky to stay there? Because we want to make sure that we are holding the shear very straight and very steady whenever we are cutting. In case you are holding the shear this way, whenever you are cutting, it's gonna be all over the place. So you want all your fingers around the shear, kind of like hugging it, so it's gonna be nice and steady whenever you're cutting. The closer you're working on a specific body spot, the more important it, from safety perspective, it is to have a steady hand. In case you are working on other body parts further away from the skin, in case you are going this way, it's not going to be that much of a safety issue, more like a look issue, because it's going to have crazy amount of lines. The coat will have crazy amount of lines. So to have a steady hand, it's going to benefit you not just from safety perspective, but also from the looks perspective.